Today I know that in the syllabus it did talk about starting a new weldment. However, I am going to bypass that, and today we are going to talk about continuing to work on our cross. Okay, I'm looking in the camera, and the camera's got everything reversed, so I'm trying to grab this foam thing in my ear, and it's backwards than what it should be, so I should be grabbing over here. So we're going to talk about continuing to work on our cross. We are using the E6010. Again, this is a fast freeze rod, and so we are not using a drag motion like we have done with the 7018. We are using a push-pull, a forward-back, tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That is the type of motion we are using with this electrode. The reason for that is we are moving forward. We're heating up the material, we're moving forward, and then moving back and depositing just enough filler metal in that puddle to let it solidify, and then moving forward again, and then moving back to deposit some more filler metal. It's kind of like welding with oxy fuel. Okay? Heating up the material, depositing the metal. 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 Okay? It's kind of that mindset that we're doing it with the electrode. It's also important to remember that when we are welding with our X, that we've got to fill this thing up level. Right? We've got to fill it up level. We don't want to see it rising too much on one side or the other. You want it to come up as level as possible. Okay? And if you see that you're getting too high on one side, then you want to run a bead on the other side. Also, it's important that as you're welding, you don't see 1, 2, 3, 4 individual beads, but you see at the completion, you see one bead and then several half beads. Okay, so that's important. That's what I'm looking for. Also, the consistency of those weld puddles, those little round circles. Okay, we're looking for the consistency in those, and that tells me that you're pushing the puddle back far enough. When we're running 7018, it's very simple. You're just dragging, and you're running the same speed as you're dragging, and that's going to give you that nice consistency of puddle. And here, it's pushing back at the same speed, right? Your work angle and direction of travel doesn't change. Okay? So when we're welding in the 1G position, your work angle is still perpendicular, almost 90 degrees of what it is that you're welding. Okay? Direction of travel is about 30, 40, 45 degrees in direction of the weld. Okay? And again, I've always said, get the electrode out of your face far enough so that you can see what's going on with your weld puddle. Okay? As I was explaining to some of the students last week, and also on the video, the tendency is, as we are pushing the puddle forward and pushing the puddle back and coming forward, the tendency is to want to raise that electrode as we come forward. It's a natural movement of the hands, okay? To pivot on the arm and on the elbow, it's just a natural movement. Okay? Even though we're only moving just a little bit, it's still a natural movement because these are all pivot points And a pivot point doesn't pivot in a straight line, it pivots in an arc. So now, instead of just two things to worry about, okay, work angle, direction of travel, now we've got to worry, and that electrode shortening as we are welding. Now again, we've got to worry about keeping that electrode in the weld puddle. That's where you've got to start watching that weld, that arc length, and making sure that that arc length maintains the same distance as you are working your puddle back and forth and across. Okay? Mr. Clark, how do I end my weld? How do I end my weld? Okay? With E7018, we did a little circling back over the top. With 6010, 6013, all we're going to do is we're going to pull, we're going to break the arc, and then we're going to come back and push into the puddle, break the arc, push into the puddle, break the arc, push into the puddle, break the arc. About 2 or 3 times, just like we were welding. Push in, break, push in, break, push in, break, about 2 or 3 times till we fill that up, okay, till it fills flush. Okay. If you have any questions, write them down, bring them to me tomorrow when I see you. Okay, let's demonstrate. My nice Dutch Bros sticker, you guys like that? And again, we want to set our amperage at about 85 for the 1/8 inch 6010. And make sure that you're connecting the bare electrode into your work clamp. Okay, I saw some of you, so I know it's been a while, but I saw some of you doing this number. Okay, that doesn't work. Make sure you connect the bare electrode into the work clamp there. All right. Now, when I'm sitting, these cables get a little heavy. You'll notice I prop them up on my leg, so that way the weight of the cable is on my leg, and I'm only moving this part of the cable. Okay? And then I'll prop my leg up on the chair, but this is what works best for me. Again, I'm going to start at the toe of this weld, and I'm going to weld across here and put a weld bead on top of this weld here. Okay? Cover up. Here we go. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Running right along the toe of that previous weld. And I'm only moving out about 1/4 inch in front of that weld. Oh. And we'll let it cool down, and then we'll just break it off, and I'm done with it. And then remember, we want to keep our welding helmet on when we're using our chipping hammer. Chip the slag off of it. Take our wire brush to it. Okay, this is the weld that I just ran right here, okay? Alright, I'm going to run one, I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to run it right on top of here, covering up the toe of this weld and top of that one. Alright, I'm going to run about 3 beads for you today, okay? And again, you can set up your electrode holder whatever works best for you. You know, some people like setting them up with the clamp on their thumb, with the spring side on their thumb, like this. Okay. Whatever works best for you, whatever makes you comfortable. Well, and you don't want to be raising the electrode either whenever you push back. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You want to watch the size of your puddle. Don't let the puddle get any bigger than the size of your electrode. A lot of things to be watching, but the more you weld with it, the more you get used to it, the more you know what you're looking for. Remember when you started welding with 7018? You thought, man, this rod's hard to weld with. You thought, man, this rod's hard to weld with. Man, I'll never be able to weld. Oh, this rod, it gets stuck all the time. Oh, man, this rod's terrible. And now you're like, oh, this rod's easy, man. Give me E7018 any day. Well, I really weld 7018, that 6010. Okay, we're going to chip off the slag. But if you ever go out in the field and you're welding around rusty tanks or something that's got a lot of paint on it or something like that, you know, some rusty old oil field pipe, this is the type of electrode that you're going to use. This electrode will burn through anything. Matter of fact, a lot of pipeliners, when you're laying pipe, this will be what they use for a stringer pass, because it will burn through just about anything. It's a deep penetration rod. And it will penetrate through just about anything. Typically, out in the field, you're going to have a wire wheel and a welder's helper. Feel the slag hitting me in the face. That's why you want to keep your helmet on whenever you're chipping. Okay. Get it back over here. Ow. Hot. Of course it's hot, Mr. Clark. You just welded it, you big dummy. Okay, there's the bead I just ran there. Okay, not very straight. So now I'm going to lay one right down here, and then we'll call it a day for today, okay? And typically you want to quench this about every 2 or 3 welds, because this is a deep penetrating electrode, because it does run a little hotter than your E7018 or your 7018s. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and throw one more bead down on top of it, and then we'll call it a day. Probably one of the easiest starting electrodes that there is. This electrode is difficult to get stuck. It doesn't stick as easy as a 7018s. As you get to working on these, I don't care if you take them outside and hit them with the wire wheel. I'm fine with that. Or if you want to just hit them with the wire brush, I'm fine with that too. Wire brush works fine. Again, this being a deep penetrating rod, it will burn right through most of this slag. However, if you're ever doing a plate test, with 6010, 6011, I would have a wire wheel and make sure that you get all the slag, because it's easy to get slag in collision with the 6010, 6015. I'm holding it upside down. It's just the way I grabbed it. Okay, so you see that last one I just put on there. Okay, I'm starting to go a little bit off to the side there, because this is somebody's that I grabbed out of there, but that's fine. I can fix it. Okay, but that's what your weld should be looking like, pretty close to that. Okay, and so. Next week I will introduce the lap weld with the E6010, and we'll talk about that next week, so be ready for that. I will see you in the booth. I'm out.